Welcome to the Women Who Changed the World podcast, the place where everyday women world changers share their stories to inspire, challenge, and equip you to change your world.
Are you stuck in your office spinning your wheels? Is it time for you to get away from your business so you can focus on the business? Maybe a retreat. I'm Katie Horner of the For Your Success podcast, and though my husband and I started out in full-time ministry, living well below the poverty line, our six-figure business now gives us ministry opportunities that far outweigh the ones we had in full-time ministry. Join me and my husband Tap on April 30th at the Get Out of the Boat Christian Business Virtual Retreat to recharge your batteries, and let us show you how fun it can be to walk out your faith in your business with joy and confidence, because doing the business that God created you to do can be your best worship. The Get Out of the Boat Christian Business Retreat is April 30th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and you can attend from anywhere online. We can't wait to see you there. You can get all the info and register for your ticket right now at getoutoftheboat.com.
And here we have part 2 of this wonderful interview. It had so many amazing things that to cut any out would be sad. There will be a bit of overlay from the previous episode, but that's to keep the conversation having flow and continuity. And with that, we are back. So let's just throw away the barriers, the language barriers, all of it. And if you could have a project, like a pet project, while living in South Korea, what would you pursue? And what would you want to be known? Like, this is her. Be known for this project.
As a total dream, I would be a midwife. I would be the woman that women go to say, I don't want to do this alone. If language weren't a barrier, I would love to go sit at the feet of older ajumas, older Korean women, and go learn from them. I want to learn the old ways. I want to learn how they used to do things, because there's a group of people here that are getting old and they're going to die out. And it kills me every time I walk past someone and they talk to me. I'm like, I wish I understood more. I would want to go learn from them. I would want to go find the midwives in the backwoods farms of Korea, and I would want to gather information from them so it doesn't get lost. Write a book from their perspective of old birthing culture, because you can't find that information here. I've had Korean friends look. It almost just doesn't exist. And it's sad.
That breaks my heart. There's so many good stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just a story, that is that's knowledge. That's deep knowledge of, I guess in a way they're missing. This is part of who they are as a culture. They see that they want to be westernized. They want to be like us, and it's like you don't see the value of you and who you are. And so that kind of knowledge just gets left in the grave with these people who have it.
It's very sad, and I know that there are people here, and there are younger people here that do find value in the things. And of course, it's going to be harder for me because I do not speak the language to the capacity that I would be comfortable with currently. That will change. Where I am now with learning Korean is not my stopping point. It's a pause point. As I work through other things with the expat community that has kind of called out to me and has requested my assistance or knowledge, or they just want to talk through trauma and whatnot. So that's where I am now. But no, as a pet project, that would be something I would love to do. And then ultimate end all goal, if I were to be here for a very long period of time and I could speak the language, I would love to be a community midwife. And that could really, for the more radical, and again, the word radical not meaning crazy, but the root of the original midwives, where they would sit with the woman and not be so medical, but sit there and talk her through you can do this. Here, how do you feel about moving into this position, or let's get you over here. Let's get you over here. Would you like to be over here? Because consent is obviously number one. And truly serving the woman instead of serving your certification or serving your degree, which definitely comes with red tape. Being a true radical midwife with the red tape completely cut through.
That would be amazing. I've had 2 midwives myself. I've had 1, 2, 3, 4 doulas. Highly recommend having a doula. The midwife experience was really, really good. It's a very freeing thing and very empowering,
Mm-hmm.
because you realize my body's doing exactly what it was made to do.
Mm-hmm. And
And
that's
yeah,
and that's so amazing when we figure out that that's what our bodies were made to do. Now, that's not to say that things don't happen. A terminology that's used in birth work a lot is birth work is death work. And that's something that a lot of doulas and midwives are afraid of and they shy away from, is because the fact that, sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes we bring a child into the world that isn't meant to live here for more than a few minutes. And while we can sort through the what ifs and what could I have done right, or what happened, or what went wrong, or if I had been in the hospital, what would have happened. But you know what? You can't know those things. That's only for God to know. And not to say that medical intervention isn't a wonderful thing whenever um, it's used in the proper context, but a lot of the time, especially nowadays, it's used in such a way and so frequently that it's causing more problems than it solves.
yes.
Um, and even with midwifery, as it gets to be more highly regulated, the red tape that is put on it by insurance companies and by doctors that they work under, um, it, there can be times in midwifery and home birth that can be just as abusive as in the system. And even in the system, I've had a wonderful hospital birth where I was in my full power and authority, and I loved it. But then you also could have midwives that'll be like, oh, you're getting close to 42 weeks. You need to go be induced because my licensure will not allow me to operate if you go past 42 weeks, and you'll risk out. So you need to go in and get an induction. And it's not that that's the right thing for the woman. I got to talk a woman whom I've never met before stateside. She just went to 42.3. And she had the support of many other people, but she messaged me and was asking, hey, what's normal with this? This is, I haven't had the baby yet. Should I be worried? And, you know, she ended up not having an induction because she asked the right questions and she followed her instinct. And this is her first child, which is the coolest part because, yeah, whenever you have a first time mom following her instincts, going past that 42-week mark, to the rest of the world sounds absolutely insane. And to a midwife who can sometimes can care more about their license and keeping their license and protecting themselves rather than what does this woman want me to do. And that's where true midwifery comes in. That's where radical midwifery or radical birth keeping comes in, is truly serving the woman and serving her needs rather than serving the needs of a licensure.
Doctors do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Got to do this blood test, got to do that blood test, got to check for this, got to check for that, got to do this. Oh, you're overweight. That means you probably have gestational diabetes. No, I don't.
Oh, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. I mean, first off, every pregnant woman is kind of overweight. If she's not healthy. But I've had that every time. You probably have gestational diabetes. And even delivering after 40 is when I had my last one. And they're like, oh, we're sure. And I'm like, no, I don't. No, I don't. And I had midwives who were under doctors and they were like, oh, yes, you do. And I'm like, no, I don't. So I can see the system. I had one midwife, and then with my number 4, and we moved from Indiana to Pennsylvania. So I had to find a new midwife a month before he was born.
Oh heavens.
So that was an interesting experience. And he was my only successful home birth. And then the next one, I went for about 12 hours at third stage labor, where
Ooh,
I had contractions lasting a minute to a minute and a half and having a 10-second break between contractions.
that's rough.
But I wasn't dilating. I was only at 3 centimeters.
Yikes.
So we ended up transporting to the hospital. And that's when I got very, very lucky to have a great doctor who kept my midwife in the room. And they were talking about everything that was going on. And they realized that my body goes from nothing to third stage labor really, really fast, and it stays there. She ended up, I wanted an epidural. I was done with the pain.
Oh, totally.
I got an epidural, and she said, I want to give you Pitocin. I'm like, I don't care what you do. I got the epidural in me. And so she gave me Pitocin, and things progressed. My body was able to relax, and it progressed really, really fast. And it was after number 5 that I decided, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to have him at the hospital. I know what's going to happen. And that same doctor delivered my number 6, and she's like, yeah, you know your body, you know exactly what's going to happen. And it's just a weird thing that she had never seen before, how a woman can be stuck in third stage labor and not progress.
Yeah, and that's the difference between, you made your own choice and you were informed and you knew what was going on and you consented and there was respect and kindness, and that's you should be able to make whatever choice you want to make concerning your body and labor and delivery of your child, um, and be respected and feel safe.
Yes.
And that's the goal. The goal is not to have the magical home birth. The goal is, obviously safe mama, safe baby, but that should be the groundwork.
Right.
That should be the bare minimum. We shouldn't just be, oh, at least you had a healthy baby. It's like, how did you feel? This is why we have such a huge epidemic of postpartum depression, postpartum OCD, postpartum psychosis, like these crazy things. Because we're neglecting choice. And when you take choice away from a person, they feel trapped. And that's never fun.
Well, you had mentioned about how Western medicine had affected birth in the hospitals there. My oldest was delivered in the States by a woman from South Korea who was a doctor, and she did an episiotomy without my permission.
And so common here.
There's consequences that I faced even 23 years later that I still have to deal with because of that episiotomy. Thankfully, I had an epidural at the time, but she was dealing with me having eclampsia. It got so bad that the blood pressure monitor, she turned it away because every time I saw it, it was getting worse. So she dealt with it really, really well, and I was thankful for the modern medicine, but that episiotomy was a whole other ball of crazy and pain and frustration. And between that and my next birth, I understand the whole it's sometimes out of control and they don't listen to you. I mean, it was bad enough that I got a nurse fired. She wouldn't let me I'd had an epidural and she wouldn't let me hold my baby. I'm laying down in the bed and she wouldn't let me hold my baby because she said I might drop her.
That's also very common here, especially during COVID. Certain hospitals will let you hold your baby, but then they'll take your baby away for a few hours. And then if you have a C-section, you will not be able to hold your baby majority of the time. They will take the baby to the nursery, they will feed the baby formula, and they will not bring it to you for up to 12 to 15 hours later. And then even then, they will wheel you into the nursery for you to sit and feed. The dad cannot go in there because there are other moms trying to breastfeed their babies too. Breastfeeding used to be a part of the culture here. It is not so much now. unfortunately, that's a dying art. Unfortunately, it's it's so very sad. Um, but the separation of mom and babies is very common here, um, especially during the height of COVID, and even still some now. It's relaxed a little bit, but even still, there have been some cases, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, um, where they were taking babies away to quarantine, and you could not see your baby until you left the hospital because they thought that you could get your baby sick and that the baby was safest in the little bassinet, um, fed on a clock, and that's still pretty common here.
So I want to switch topics a little bit. You and I had talked a little bit previously about how the birth rate is really, really low in
Mm-hmm.
South Korea. As an expat, as an American, and all of our American sass that we have that overwhelms people
Mm-hmm.
who isn't used to Americans, like, this is my right, get out of my way.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see is causing the low birth rate in South Korea from your perspective? I'm not saying this is the actual facts of everything, but from your perspective, what do you see?
I think it's a couple of different things. I think a lot of it is that you have couples that are still living with their parents because of how expensive things can be here sometimes. And especially, you've got, the dad working, the mom has to, that stays at home. I prefer the stay at home mom life, but I understand where in a lot of families it takes two to work and survive. And whenever you don't have the proper, you know daycare, and you have to live with your parents. There's a part of the culture here where they have something called love motels, because you're not gonna um, engage in marital activities with your husband when you're in the next room to your parents, with very thin walls. So love motels are a thing here, where you go and you'll rent out a room, so that you can have time with your spouse or your significant other, depending on what you're interested in. Um, but yeah, that's one reason for the birth rate being so low. Um, a lot of women don't want to go into the hospitals because of they don't want to go through all of that. Um, Most of them have never had proper sex education anyway here at all. They don't really know how that kind of stuff works. Um, and then another thing that I've heard is really common here, and this is a sad one, is the husband and wife, they'll get married and they'll have the one kid, and then unfortunately adultery is a really big, terrible problem here, where the husband will lose interest and go find a mistress elsewhere. It's so broken, and it's so sad. Um, and for me, being a believer, this culture is majority like atheist, Buddhist, agnostic. There is some Protestant Christianity, there's some Catholicism, um, but and this is just my perspective. Obviously, I'm an American expat. I cannot speak on behalf of the Korean people, and I am not speaking for the Korean people in any way, shape, or form here. But as a believer, it's so interesting whenever you don't have a society that's focused on God, whenever you don't have a society that's focused on the family and the family unit, things fall apart. And, you know, children are a blessing from God. And I feel like that's why we see the birth rate falling a lot of different places around the world. And that's just my personal opinion.
Do you think it also has to do with this shame culture?
Oh, heavily. The shame culture is major here. It's not It's slowly starting to go away a little bit. People are getting more brazen and whatnot and more forward. But yeah, I definitely think it has a lot to do with the shame culture. Single mothers are, I'm sure as you know, are very looked down upon here. It's not really a crime to beat your wife here. It's very hard to get away from domestic violence situations. If you call the cops in a domestic violence situation as a Korean woman, the cops will most likely laugh at you and walk away because you're your husband's property. So you have a lot of single moms that are poor and destitute, and they're not gonna not married. They're not gonna have more children. They've already got the one or two or however many they have whenever they flee these desperate situations. And then Korean society, and this is just from what I've seen, tends to sweep these kind of things under the rug. You don't see many overweight people out because of shame society and shame culture. You don't see single moms out because of the shame culture. People with disabilities are very much hidden away, um, and are not allowed to leave their homes. Shame cultures, I mean, it's in every country in the world to some extent, but and that drives the suicide rate up here, which is incredibly high. It's so sad.
So what's birth control like over there? Do they I mean, here you gotta go to the doctor and you gotta have an exam if you want to get any kind of birth control as a woman. And well, condoms are readily available at any gas station, drugstore, regular store here.
It's pretty common here to, I'm pretty sure from what I've understood, that's not something I've explored here, so it's not something I'm particularly familiar with. But I know most people here will use the hormonal IUD, hormonal birth control is generally what they use, and they don't really question it. I've never used hormonal birth control before. I typically use the fertility awareness method, um, until I get lazy and mess up, and that's how you get pregnant. But just in case anyone else listening doesn't particularly know that, there you go. That's how you make babies, y'all. Uh,
You just ignore your body. It has nothing else to do with anything else. Just ignore your body and you get pregnant.
you know what? Exactly. That. There you go.
Then you
But
get pick
yeah,
then you pick the baby out of the Cabbage Patch.
there you go. Exactly. That's the nice PG version. But no, I'm pretty sure it's hormonal birth control here, unless I'm mistaken, because that's all I know is that from the expat side. And they really push birth control. So basically, as soon as you have the baby, they'll be like, "Oh, is your tubes tied? Do you want?" They'll really, really push for you to be on birth control, um, and that's just how it is.
But for a country who has low birth control, I mean, who has a low birth rate and is even talking about, I read an article where they were offering women money to get pregnant and
They
then
do.
offering a little bit more to actually have the baby. And even a government agency came out and said that the problem is that women have too high of standards for the fathers of their children.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I did a lot of reading. Um, that it seems counterintuitive to be pushing birth control immediately
Hmm.
right after giving birth. I mean, okay, I get it. We all women, we need a rest after we have a baby. Getting pregnant immediately afterwards is really, really hard.
Hmm.
Um, my second set are 16 months apart, and that was hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
But if you want to have more babies, but you're pushing birth control, it seems like things are completely out of balance.
Now that's all I know from the expat side. It could be, I haven't explored that too much through the local side, but I know it is readily available. But you definitely do have to go in for an exam, talk to your OB and whatnot. But because national health insurance is a thing here, everyone, um, especially women, have access to be able to go to the doctor whenever they want to. And even if you don't have insurance, it's so incredibly cheap to go to the doctor here. Like, stupid cheap.
So I have a weird question. You may not know the answer to this, but I am one who I want a female doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Want a female doctor, especially one who's given birth before,
Yes.
because I'm sorry, what does a man know about what's going on in my body? He may have gone to medical school, but it's not the same thing.
Yes.
So what is the ratio of female obese to male obese? Do you know
I
anything?
don't know the number, but I do know whenever at the start of this pregnancy, I did go to the hospital to go get one ultrasound, which that's a whole story. They were very confused as why I only wanted one and that why I wouldn't be coming back. Um, but they asked me, would you like a male or a female doctor? And it seemed like almost a pretty even split at the hospital I went to. And so I asked for a female. That's just, again, my personal preference. I believe uh, birth belongs to women, and that is our sphere of influence. My personal opinion might be controversial, but it's mine. So I think it's pretty much an even split whenever I see advertisements for hospitals and whatnot. Seems like the pictures are pretty much 50-50, maybe sometimes slightly more male dominated. Um, but it seems like they have a pretty good mix. About everyone here goes to college, um, and lots of people want to be doctors.
That makes sense. So I have a couple more questions for you.
Mhm.
What is the most important thing you have learned as an expat?
My most important thing I've learned as an expat is that us as Americans are not the center of the world. Imagine that. Moving abroad has changed my perspective so much. Now, are there things obviously within like birth and whatnot that I will absolutely not budge on because I feel like they are fundamental human rights and not an American thing? Absolutely. Um, but that, whenever you have never really left your hometown before and then you go move to a foreign country, whew, that is a complete and total mind shift where you go, oh my gosh, I I've literally thought that America was just like the center of the world for my whole entire life, and it's just not. And that, and as much as I'm patriotic and I love my country, being able to go to another place and sit and learn and be confused and not know what's going on. It's that's been the most important thing I've learned is that we're not the center. Wherever you're from, you're not the center of the world. You are a tiny, insignificant little drop in the bucket. So go enjoy some other countries.
John Maxwell has a quote about that kind of goes along with this, talking about there is you and the rest of the world is consisted of others. So there is only one you, and then the rest of the world is consisted of others. So you need to be thinking about others more than you think about yourself.
Exactly.
So what is inspiring you right now?
Ooh, so many things currently. And really, what inspires me changes depending on what's going on. Let me give this a pause. What's inspiring me right now, especially with everything we went through during 2020, and no matter how you feel about that, there's so many different opinions and perspectives, and I have my own, and I feel a certain way about it. But what's inspiring right now is being more human, being more of what God made us to be, getting away from the noise, getting away from social media, which has its place. Trust me, I use it. I use it as a tool, and try to get away from what they call doom scrolling, which is just. I learned that term the other day. It was amazing. It totally changed my brain. It's like, wow, doom scrolling. That makes so much sense because it's just like this existential crisis once you continue to scroll. It totally is, because it's just like our brains are not meant to take on this much information.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to be completely traumatized every time we look at our screen. This is not the way we're supposed to be. So what's inspiring me right now is being outside, especially being pregnant, being in nature now that it's warm and I can go, totally freaks the locals out. They'll go outside and walk around without my shoes on and they're just like, oh, no, no, you don't do that. Just like, I need the earth on my feet. We have been cooped up for far too long. I'm tired of getting terrified by the news and Facebook and Instagram and all the other stuff that's going on. So I'm being inspired by getting back to being a radical human, Radik, the root of what being a human is, what God created us to be, and be out in His world, on His grass, with His trees and His rivers, and just being out in that instead of being caught up in the rest of the world. And it's inspiring my pregnancy, it's inspiring my children, it's inspiring my family, and that's what's got me going right now.
Okay, so you've inspired me to ask one more question. Um, if I'm coming to South Korea when
Mhm.
everything is cleared and you can actually travel like a normal person
Mhm.
and not be quarantined forever and a day, what is one place you would say you have got to go here?
Ooh, oh gosh, that's so hard. There's so many good places. Um, my favorite place in Korea, and the people that live around me, they're like, that's so boring and basic, but I love it. There's a mountain in Daegu called Opsan Mountain, and it's it's stunning. It's beautiful. The temples, the streams, and the creeks, and just there's an old fortress on it, and there's a cable car that goes up it with the coffee shop on top. And if you've never, that's what I actually visited here back in 2012 to come visit my parents when Rowan, who's 9, for his 1-year-old birthday. Korea was even it was different back then. It's changed very much since then. Used to be a lot more farmland, but I had never been on the mountain before, and I remember hiking up that mountain for the first time with a baby on my back and just being in such awe of just being out there, and the temples and the old stones and these old walls and just things that have been there for like 2,000 years. It inspired me in a very profound way. So I would say Opsan Mountain and the surrounding area, but that's where I would go to go spend a day if I had to. If it was my last day in Korea, um, that's where you would find me.
That sounds beautiful. I definitely want to go visit now. Thank you so much, Cassidy, for your time. I appreciate it so much. We are 13 hours apart here. It is, we started at 9 p.m. your time, 8 o'clock my time, and I
Almost just
appreciate
10:41. Yeah, this has been great. I love it.
it. Has been so great to connect with you, and thank you to Danielle for connecting us together. It has been amazing to talk to you and to actually, yes, we're recording this on Zoom, but you only get to hear it.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. You've been a wonderful host. I appreciate being able to be on here.
Are you stuck in your office spinning your wheels? Is it time for you to get away from your business so you can focus on the business? Maybe a retreat. I'm Katie Horner of the For Your Success podcast, and though my husband and I started out in full-time ministry, living well below the poverty line, our 6-figure business now gives us ministry opportunities that far outweigh the ones we had in full-time ministry. Join me and my husband Tap on April 30th at the Get Out of the Boat Christian Business Virtual Retreat to recharge your batteries, and let us show you how fun it can be to walk out your faith in your business with joy and confidence, because doing the business that God created you to do can be your best worship. The Get Out of the Boat Christian Business Retreat is April 30th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and you can attend from anywhere online. We can't wait to see you there. You can get all the info and register for your ticket right now at getoutoftheboat.com.